Ďalším našim hosťom je ďalší astronaut, ktorý letel na ISS dvakrát, bol členom jednej z jej posádok, ale okrem toho trávil svoj čas aj ako zamestnanec SpaceX. Pomáhal SpaceX v podstate dostať Falcon 9 a Crew Dragon do vesmíru. A okrem toho je ale aj pomerne veľká mediálna hviezda, takže o týchto rôznych aspektoch jeho života sa budeme rozprávať s Garrettom Reismanom. Garrett, thank you very much to join me.
Dobrý deň.
Welcome. Dobrý deň. First I wanted to ask you, because I saw the video during your lecture, no other our readers could see that, so what was your way to become an astronaut? It wasn't so
No,
easy.
it wasn't something I expected to happen, to be honest. So when I was a child, I was very interested in space flight, and I always watched the videos of the Apollo missions to the moon, and I was fascinated. I loved everything about space and aviation. I read every book in my school library about airplanes, and I couldn't get enough. But back then, during the Apollo program, almost all of the astronauts were test pilots.
Yeah.
And my mom, I have a mother that's scared of flying, like on regular airplanes.
Like many people, yeah.
Yeah. So she was no way she was going to let me become a test pilot. That wasn't going to happen. So I never thought I'd become an astronaut. So if you asked me when I was in high school what I was going to be when I grow up, I would not have said astronaut. I would have said maybe engineer, scientist, but not astronaut. And it was really much later that I found out that you can be an astronaut and be, after being a scientist, you don't have to be a test pilot. So then that changed everything.
Jack Schmitt actually paved that way.
Yeah, he was the first.
It was the last Apollo mission, the first
right.
scientist actually in space. Yeah. So you joined NASA, but you didn't went into space. Firstly, you went somewhere else.
Oh, that's true. So while I was waiting for my ride to space, I went on a mission to the bottom of the sea called the Nemo mission. And we went to a habitat called the Aquarius habitat, which is, it's like a submarine on the bottom of the ocean, but it doesn't have an engine or a propeller, so it doesn't move. It's just anchored to the seafloor. But you can go inside and you can live there for a while. And we spent about 2 weeks down there. And the idea was that this was similar to being up on the space station because you're isolated, confined, and it was a training exercise to prepare for a space station.
Was it a physical training, or was it more of a psychological training to getting used to these confined spaces and working tight with some people?
It was more for that psychological aspect. There was a physical aspect to it. We did a lot of scuba diving, and that was actually the training was very strenuous because when you stay down on the seafloor, it's called saturation diving, and your blood has absorbed all the nitrogen, which is not a problem as long as you stay there.
So you don't feel it when you're down there?
You don't feel it down there. But if you came back up quickly, or even just normally,
you die.
You die. Yeah, you die immediately.
Yeah.
So normally when you're scuba diving, if anything goes wrong, the first step is go up, but that step is taken away. Yeah. So we had to learn very specialized techniques similar to what's used for cave diving, and we had specialized equipment, and it was all designed so that we would never have to go up.
Okay.
But it was fun, and it was a very healthy reef. It was a protected area, so we had a lot of fish and
so a lot of things to look at when you were outside.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Were there also enough windows inside so you could also
one
from
window,
the inside?
but it was really big.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was great.
So you could spend time there.
Yeah. I remember once we did a night dive, so we were outside at night.
Okay.
And the good thing about being saturated is you can do a very long
stay down there
scuba
what
dive.
you want.
Yeah, for hours. And I remember just sitting there staring at this beautiful shrimp that was translucent, and it was gorgeous. Okay. And I just sat there and I stared at it, and it was so wonderful. And then I came back inside and I was hungry. And and the food we had was all the
What's next on the menu? Shrimp salad?
Yeah. Well, a shrimp cocktail.
Okay.
And I had that in my hand, and I was like, oh, this would be perfect. I can't do it. I couldn't do it. So.
You know, I have the same feeling when I've seen a lot of videos about octopuses.
Yeah.
How intelligent they are, what they all can do. I mean, one escaped now in an aquarium somewhere. Escaped for many tens of meters and some floor and jumped into the ocean. So since then, I couldn't eat it.
No calamari.
No. Calamari maybe, but not a real octopus.
Yeah.
Somehow like that. But another question. Was this also a good preparation for the training for the EVAs on the neutral buoyancy laboratory? Did it help you to be already really an
bit.
accustomed scuba diver?
Yeah, a little bit. We did a bunch of scuba dives, and the way it helps is before you go in the big suit and practice your task, you actually go in on scuba equipment and without the big suit around you, but you can still do the same physical activity, and so it's a useful way to prepare.
Casey Thornton told me here that also it helps you, but it's not the same.
No.
Did you have the same experience?
Yeah, it's not the same because the suit is a big factor, and you have to learn how to work with the suit and not fight the suit, which is a difficult task to master. And so when you're doing scuba, you don't have that problem.
Yeah, I meant the difference between actual EVA and the training in the water, because the water has a whole high viscosity and it's a different kind of thing.
So it's easy to stop if you get going fast, because the water will just
help
the
you.
drag and it just stops. And also when you let go, you stay pretty still in the water. In space, if you let go, you immediately start moving. So you're grabbing again, and then you grab again, and you're just constantly in motion. And that's very different from the water. So you can get lulled into a false sense of security when you're in that water, that things will be still, when in truth, everything is dynamic.
How long does it take when you come to the ISS to adjust yourself to the environment of zero or microgravity? Because it's a complete different kind of coordinates and movements.
Well, yeah, it is. So when you first go up, you spend we spent about 2 days in the space shuttle before we got to the ISS, and you learn how to move inside that enclosed environment, which you have 7 people, and it's not very big.
Cramped, yeah.
It's pretty cramped. So, but then when you get to the space station, it's like stepping out into a hockey arena.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much more volume. So you have to learn all over again. So you have to start all over again to learn how to move, how to stop, how to control your body. And so after 2 days, you think you have worked it out, but no, you have to start again.
Do you get sick, or do many people get sick?
Many people do get sick. Usually the first 24 to 48 hours. On my crew, none of us got sick, and maybe because nobody started. There was no. I think if one person gets sick, there tends to be a chain reaction.
Okay.
But we were fine. A little bit. We call it stomach awareness.
Yeah. Okay.
We had a little bit of that.
So you know. Yeah. There's something happening there.
Yeah, it's not quite right.
Okay. I can imagine, but if it's not like Frank Borman on Apollo 8, then most probably it's okay.
Yeah, it's the interesting thing is that there's no way to know in advance how you and any individual will react. The only way to know is to go and find out.
I would love to.
And there's people that do great in aerobatic airplanes and roller coasters and everything, and never get car sick or air sick, and they go up there and they're sick as a dog. There are other people who hate to be in airplanes or boats and go up in space and they're fine. So and vice versa. So there's no way to predict.
I should tell my wife.
Yeah,
she's the other way around. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. After you came back. Let's talk a little bit about, because I tried to find out about your EVAs a little bit. So what were they about? What was their goal?
The first one I did was we were putting together a robot that we brought up called Dexter. It's a Canadian robot that we had to, ironically, it's designed so that we don't have to go outside and do as many spacewalks. It's because it is dangerous. And so but it took 4 spacewalks to put it together. It's like, I don't think this is working. But we did that, and then the next 2 spacewalks were on my last mission, and those we installed a new antenna on top of the space station, and then we changed out a lot of the batteries for the solar panels.
So some servicing stuff.
Yeah, construction and maintenance of the space station.
It's the most of the space shuttle flights actually were something like that, building and service and servicing. Okay, so you came back. And then you decided, okay, what's next?
Yeah. So when I came back from that last mission, that was 2010, and there were only 3 more flights of the space shuttle, and I didn't have a ticket for any of them. So I had the opportunity to fly again on a Soyuz with the Russian rocket, and go back and go back to the space station, but it was going to take a while because without the shuttle. We had a lot of astronauts, not that many flight opportunities. So it's going to be about 5 years. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do something else with my career, I should do it now before I get too old. And so I saw what was happening in the private sector, and specifically at SpaceX.
Yeah.
And I said that, I saw that there was a potential there for a big change. So I decided that to try it out.
You said it also in your lecture that actually what SpaceX is doing now is a complete different approach. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because as I said, our guys won't see the lecture. So,
Right.
so what's in short maybe, what's the difference between SpaceX and NASA now?
Well, SpaceX is actually a lot like the way NASA used to be during Apollo. So during Apollo, they were moving very fast. They were working with a lot of hardware. They weren't afraid to test things to learn, and they were. Their approach to risk management was pretty forward-leaning, which is what SpaceX is like now. In fact, I've had NASA astronauts from the Apollo era come and visit SpaceX, and they say to me that SpaceX today reminds them more of NASA
In the 60s.
than NASA reminds them of NASA in the 60s, right? So it is in some ways a return to what it used to be like.
Sorry. Do you think it's because of the accidents of the space shuttle?
Yes, yeah, exactly. The Apollo 1 fire, but then also Challenger and Columbia. Definitely, after each one of those accidents, NASA became more and more risk adverse and afraid to try new things. And I understand that. I was there for Columbia. I knew a lot of the people. In fact, I'm traveling tomorrow. I'm flying from Bratislava directly to Tel Aviv to visit with the Ramon family.
Yeah, okay.
And their father was one of the astronauts that was killed on. So I still have this deep personal relationship, because when you see people go through such horrible things, you never want anybody else to have to experience that. So I understand why this happened. It's a very natural human reaction when you live through something so tragic to do everything you can to prevent it. But typically the human reaction is to not to do anything new, because of the fear that you
could
make a mistake and fail.
Mm-hmm.
So you just do what you've always been doing, but that's, from an engineering standpoint, it's the worst thing you can do, because you never improve anything.
Yeah, that was the difference, because you said also Apollo 1, but I think Apollo 1 was one of the accidents. They almost shut Apollo down after the accident. All the Senate committees and everything. I mean, Frank Borman saved them, actually, because he said, okay, stop the witch hunt and let us fly. But then the bold decisions came with Apollo 8 and following. But Challenger and Columbia, I think, had more impact on that, also because of public opinion. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting. So first of all, you're right about Apollo 1. It didn't slow them down very much. The remarkable thing to me is Apollo 1 happened in 1967.
Yeah.
And only 2 years later, Neil and Buzz were walking on the moon.
Yeah.
So it's incredible that they, despite
68 already flew the
Apollo 8.
Apollo 7 in September.
Yep.
So something like.
So they didn't slow down very much. But you're right that after Challenger and Columbia, it was a bit more impactful as far as the. And it wasn't so much public opinion. In fact, public opinion really saved us. After Columbia, I remember a lot of us thought, well, we're done, and we're never going to fly the space shuttle again. And in fact, that's what the vice president, who was Dick Cheney at the time, he wanted no more space shuttles.
Yeah.
But the public actually said this would be, a travesty if we stopped flying. That would be the last thing in the world that those 7 men and women would want. So they were very supportive, it's surprising to us. And very encouraging that the public felt that way. And there was actually a lot of support to continue.
So, SpaceX, are we really going to the moon? You will have a panel about this.
Yeah, we will. Which is going to start soon. So
I don't want to keep you that's why I'm coming to that.
Yeah.
Is this the way to go back to moon?
Well, it's NASA's way. So NASA has involved SpaceX. It's a public-private partnership.
Yeah, I know.
So the astronauts that go back to the moon are going to go in the SLS rocket, the Orion capsule, but then they're going to dock to Starship. Yeah. And Starship is going to take them to the lunar surface.
The landing module.
So it's part of NASA's plan, and in fact, NASA is dependent on Starship working in order to accomplish the third Artemis mission and actually have astronauts on the moon again. So NASA and SpaceX, it's a partnership. It's they benefit each other. They work together, and it's not one versus the other. It's the two working as partners.
Sure. I've saw some videos of people who really understand also the technology and also the theoretics of space flight. And there were some serious doubts about, for example, the near rectilinear halo orbit. That is really vast. I mean, it's 6.5 days. It's not like in the Apollo era where it was 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it brings up some questions if it's really safe to fly this way to the moon, because if anything happens and the gateway or the Orion is just passed around the moon, you have to wait 6 days until it comes back, for example. So
true. So yeah, it would take a little bit longer in an emergency if you had to do an abort and come home. You could do it faster with Apollo, but we have to do it this way just because Orion doesn't have the
power.
The power, yeah. It can't get to. You can't get Orion and the service module to
the
low lunar orbit.
Lunar,
it doesn't have enough delta V. So as a result, this is kind of the compromise.
That's the one thing. The second is, I don't know if you are much more involved than me, but what I've noticed that compared to the Apollo era, we have much less information about what is planned. Is it because it's still not really worked out, or is somebody keeping more things secret? Because I was really searching for the kind of materials you can see were published about Apollo in the time when it was really developed. You got weekly newsreels about what was happening to special parts of the spacecraft and everything. Now I don't find such things. Am I searching wrong, or is it less than it was then?
Are you looking for information about what the astronauts will do when they get to the surface?
The technical things about the spacecraft, how we are getting there.
Well, one thing that's very different is, at least when it comes to Starship, which is the
lander,
is it's proprietary.
It's a different thing. Yeah.
So it's corporate. So
True.
So they're and it's true for SpaceX. It's true for Blue Origin. It's true for all the companies because
private companies can do what they want.
Yeah.
I'm more asking about the NASA because it's a public funded organization.
It is, but NASA can't provide. There's information that SpaceX gives to NASA that's marked proprietary, and NASA can't just say
publish it
because and it drives journalists nuts. I know Bill Harwood is I remember talking to him about this because he is used to getting a lot of information from NASA.
Yeah.
But NASA,
the press kits were like this.
Yeah,
and now something like this.
Right. So, and this is a large part of the reason is because of the proprietary. But I think it's also a cultural change at NASA that they're also just less willing to divulge that amount of detail. I think that maybe they follow a little bit in the footsteps of the private companies that are reluctant to do so, and maybe they don't need to be quite as tight-lipped. But that's not my job. It's not my fault.
No.
Don't blame me.
Not at all. Now, you have quite a broad also public presence on the TV channels. How did that come into life?
Well, I mean, it started when I was up in space. It was not something I planned or intended, but there was media interest by one particular show, the Colbert Report, and so we did that, and it was well received. And then when I came back, I just started doing some public speaking, and people were interested, and then I got involved with a television show. So I work on a television show called For All Mankind on Apple TV, and I've worked on. I think part of it's because I live in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I think I was the last person in Los Angeles to have their own podcast. I finally
you have
made
a podcast?
One. Yeah, I do.
Which is with your colleague?
Yes, Mike Massimino. It's called Two Funny Astronauts.
Yes. Okay. So we have to look it up.
Yeah, and we point out that we're not saying that we're actually funny people. We're just saying we're funny for astronauts, which is it's a low bar. Okay.
it's easier to jump over.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
okay.
We like to have low expectations, but
yeah. Okay, but I will look it up definitely.
Cool.
Good. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. It was fun.